Hello, everyone. I wanted to tell you today about a visitation I had from Gwyn a couple of days ago and something that happened today as a result of me contemplating that. So, a couple of days ago, Gwyn ap Nuith appeared in my room in the morning before I'd got up at the end of the bed. But he appeared not as this sort of great mythological figure, not as this horned god, but as man. And he didn't have the usual sort of presence that he has. He was thin. He was not thin physically, but he was fading in and out. He was opaque, obscure. And he said to me, I am free of my bonds. I have my free will. And I took this to mean he was free of his responsibilities as the guardian of the gate of Anun, of the Celtic otherworld, or as free as his bonds of, leader of the Wild Hunt. And I asked Gwyn if now he was free of his bonds, if he was no longer bound to his roles, what would he do? And he said that he will stay and carry on his role, albeit with more freedom, because he's no longer bound by certain rules. And I said, why? Why will you carry on if you can go anywhere and do anything? And he said that he enjoys helping people and he's reluctant to leave us at this point. And I sense partly that this was for him as much as it was for us. He's been earthbound doing this job a really long time, you know, more than 1,000 years. And I sensed almost a little bit of fear is the wrong word, but he was a bit discombobulated by the situation he found himself in, of no longer being bound to these roles and having to do them. And then on a walk today, I was thinking about this visitation I'd had from him. And I realized that I had forgotten about one of the roles that he has. And Gwyn ap Nuith is linked to May Day as well, Beltane. And there is a legend that he was cursed by King Arthur, or there was a great argument, and King Arthur ruled that Gwyn and his rival Gwythyr were to battle over the woman they both loved, Creuddylad, every May Day, every Beltane, until the end of time. And this is symbolic of the spring summer, the oak king, handing over the seasons to the holly king, the winter king of autumn winter, Gwyn ap Nuith. And Creuddylad is thought not to be a person, but to represent Britain herself. And this was the Brythonic way of explaining the seasons. However, Gwyn has always said that Creuddylad was a real person, was a real woman, and he loved her. So then I thought, well, if Gwyn is free of his bonds, then he's free of this curse or this ruling from Arthur Pendragon, Arthur Macedon, King Arthur. And Gwyn would only be free then if it was the end of time, because Gwyn was cursed to fight Gwythyr every May Day till the end of time. And I thought, well, how can it be the end of time? And then this led me to think about the Vishnu dream that I had the other day that I posted about on Substack, that I dreamt that Vishnu came to me and said, you may as well have fun because you're nearly out of time. you're running out of time. There's only an hour left. And this made me think of, the final hour. There's only 1 hour. This is the final hour. And I thought, well, how can it be the end of time, right? Time exists everywhere in different ways. Um, it's how we perceive it that gives it its linearness, but it still exists. And then I remembered about in ancient India how the epochs, the great eras, were called the Yuga cycles, and there was these great eras, and they would end, and another one would begin. And we have been in the Kali Yuga, the cycle of the mother, uh, creation and nurturing, and people have tried to work out um, exactly when the end of the Kali Yuga cycle would be. And lots of people have lots of different theories. Some people think that it already ended 500 years ago. Some people think it's ending, in another 1,000 years. And there's lots of arguments over it, and nobody really knows. And so I was wondering that if Gwyn was free, then it must be the end of time. So, did that mean that it was the end of the Yuga cycle? Are we seeing the end of the Kali Yuga? And as I was thinking about this and thinking of the start of the Satya Yuga, which would be the next one, which is the time of truth and wholefulness, and wholeness, which sounds awfully nice compared to where we are now. As I was thinking about this, that, does Gwyn being free mean it's the end of the Kali Yuga? 4 swans flew over my head really low, and it stopped me in my tracks. And because swans in folklore are messengers between heaven and earth, they are regularly used in Celtic Brythonic folklore to link to sovereignty and kings. And of course, I've just been thinking about Gwyn and Gwythea and the Holly King and the Oak King. And then these swans flew over me that are likened in Arthurian lore to the story of the Fisher King and Lohengrin, the Swan Knight, and the White Queen, Gwenhwyfar, who, of course, was fought over by Lancelot and Arthur. She was caught between the two, and all this sort of confirmed to me exactly what I'd just been thinking. And in as many days, we again had the imagery of a sacred quest. And there was 4 swans. Now, swans are quite an unusual sight where I am. I'm quite far north in Oxfordshire, and we don't have a lot of swans in this particular stretch of river. And so it was an unusual sight. So to see 4 at the same time as well, going right over my head, just as I'm thinking that, is very, very unusual. Now, 4 is the number of compass directions, north, south, east, and west. It's the number of elements. It's the 4 corners of the world. There's 4 watchers, the archangels, the Persian royal stars known as the watchers. It's the number in numerology of stability, of foundations, of the known, and of the watchers as the witnesses of time, of human experience of time. And these swans, these 4 swans, flew from behind over my head really low and away. And I took this, and it was at the exact moment that I was thinking, does Gwyn being free mean the Yuga cycle has ended? The Kali Yuga has ended, and we're moving into the Satya cycle. And I took this, that this was confirmation that that is indeed what is happening. And that is why Gwyn has been freed of his bonds. And I think that we're at a crossing point now. We're at an ancient threshold point in time and in history where many of us are going to find ourselves facing challenges and decisions where we have to make a clear choice, like Arthur or Lancelot, like Gwyn and Gwythyr, there is a yes or a no. And I think we're going to find ourselves having to make these decisions where we have to take a leap of faith, and it is a epoch ending significance level decision. So I wanted to quickly look at the cards. I've got here again my Wildwood tarot cards. They are by Mark Ryan and John Matthews. And I've also got the Enchanted Map cards here by Colette Baron Reid, just for a bit more guidance. I've done all my protection, and I've asked Gwyn in advance if he would be happy to just give us some cards about the theory that I've come up with, that this means that if Gwyn is free, this is the end of the Yuga cycle. So let's ask him, shall we? Oh, and one's flown out straight away. Oh my goodness, one's flown out straight away. And it is, can you see that? Hang on. It's the swan. You couldn't make it up, could you? I was literally just shuffling them and that flew out. The swan. That is the messenger between worlds. And that is literally what we were just talking about. That is the biggest yes, I think, to what we were just discussing, that we are at the end of an epoch. We are at the end of the Kali Yuga, moving into the Satya Yuga, which I think should give us all hope, even though we're in a really difficult time right now. Also, the swan is a picture of grace, but is paddling furiously underneath. And that's, I think, reminds us of what Gwyn always says, that, you know, we should, even though we're in complete chaos in the world, we should really go within and focus on our inner calm and inner quiet, that tiny seed within ourselves that is always quiet and still, even if we're feeling stressed or everything is crazy, and focus on that and grow the new cycle of time, grow the Satya Yuga from that tiny seed of calm, instead of how we've lived for the last however many thousand years. The underlying card, after all that flew out, again, is protection. Now, Gwyn has used this card before to represent us, about how we are protected like a newborn fawn by our ancestors. And also on this card, you've got ancient labyrinth type symbols here, which represent time. And so here, I think Gwyn is very much saying that's exactly where we're at. Is there anything else you want to add, Gwyn? Is there anything else you'd like to say? Keep your chin up. Endurance. You know, it seems like chaos, there's lightning striking. You know, it seems like the cupboard is bare. That's a very bare cave, isn't it? But she's got fire and she's got a cape. She might feel very lonely, but she's got warmth and shelter. She's going to be okay. And I think that's what he's saying to us. Just concentrate on seeing the joys in the small things that you have in your life and in your family that bring you joy, and it is going to be all right. And again, the underlying card here is the hawk. Now, we had that symbol the other day, didn't we, in that vision he gave us with all that Horus and Isis and Hathor symbology. But so again, I think that's confirmation to go back and listen to what he said in his last message. But also to me, the hawk, especially in this deck, symbolizes something that doesn't act rashly. It symbolizes a bird that flies above all the chaos and the fray, and it bides its time, and it seeks its own counsel, and it doesn't act until it's sure. And I think Gwyn is saying here that take your time to make the decisions you need to take, and don't take them until you're sure, and listen to your instinct. Because when the hawk dives, that trigger point is that surety it's going to hit the target. And that is something that isn't achieved by overthinking. That's something that is achieved by listening to its intuition. So let's look at the Enchanted Map by Colette Baron Reid and see if there's anything extra that Gwyn would like to tell us. Advice for us. You have any advice for us, Gwyn, in dealing with this situation we find ourselves in at the end of the Kali Yuga? Here, the gentle gardener. And there's eggs hatching. Now, Gwyn has likened himself in his last message, didn't he, to a gardener. He said the payment was tending the garden, looking after nature, remembering that we are part of nature, not apart from it, and that we have to work within it. But there's fairies hatching from eggs in this card, which is a really lovely symbol of, even though they've had to work really hard to break their way out of their confinement, they're now free in the sunshine, drying their wings. And I think that that's a really nice symbol for this difficult process we're going through. And when I first pulled the card out, actually, when I first looked at it, because I haven't got my glasses on, I thought they were sheep, which of course Gwyn has said, I am your shepherd. So all of those things fit really well. And if you see up there, there's sort of like a fairy godmother, an ancestor spirit up the top there. And this is card number 2 as well, which is the number of decisions as well, which was exactly what we were just talking about, making decisions, but being protected in those decisions and knowing that if you follow your instinct and you make decisions that are based on a complete consideration as well as your instinct. You're taking into account nature and everybody else. You're not just being selfish. Then be sure that the result of that is going to be positive, even though this situation at the moment in the world does not seem very positive. And the underlying card is slow and steady. And look, there's a snail fairy. And I think that's a lovely way of Gwyn reminding us, as he did with the Hawk card, just to take your time. Nothing terrible is going to happen because you've taken a bit longer. You've slowed down, you've given yourself the time you need. You may even choose to remove yourself from watching the news or talking about politics or money or anything like that at the moment, just to give yourself the time and the space to think clearly, because all that noise can be a huge distraction to your intuition. And I think as we move through this really difficult time, Gwyn is saying that it is going to be okay if you listen to your intuition and don't make a move until you're sure that you are making a decision truly based on what your heart and your soul is telling you to do. Until next time, bye bye.